said, this is a good idea. Well, some more than others. You can't win them all anyway. So, for the supervisors and resolution authorities in the room, a few areas that we should pay particular attention to are the expectations of the industries. Regulators should strive to, 1, provide clear, sometimes detailed, and an output-oriented guidance. You must be able to explain the interaction and integration with current prudential requirements. Streamline jargons as much as possible and give clear messages throughout the regulatory authority. Be explicit about your expectations on the data, quality, and resources required. For data, information required should be tailored and proportionate to the firm, not one size fits all. Know what you need and use what you have. 3rd, to be realistic on the timelines. 4th, to provide timely, insightful feedback and deliver when you promise to do so. 5, to get coordinated at the domestic level if supervisory function and resolution functions are in separate agencies, and also internationally, either bilaterally or multilaterally. We have also heard that some of the key challenges for recovery plans, there are too little or too much information, too simplistic or too complex plans, detailed versus targeted data, quality and integrity of data. For resolution plan, the challenges are greater as this is a more complex undertaking. Cliché, I know, but balance, like everything else, is key. In short, RRP is a strategic tool, both for the banks and the regulators, mainly beneficial to remove structural barriers to resolution. Secondly, RRP is a communication tool, a single source of truth. This is crucial, as we know. In the regulatory realms, there can be multiple truth and half-truth. Thirdly and lastly, RRP is an endurance sport, a marathon if you like. So wear comfortable shoes and get ready for the long haul. So have a safe life. Thank you.
Thank you, Afiza, for that comprehensive summary. Dear audience, after 2 days of very insightful presentations, now have arrived at our concluding panel for this seminar entitled Voice of Asia, Cross-Border Crisis Management and Resolution. Time to act. ACT, Action, Cooperation, Collaboration, and Teamwork. Panel brings together 4 expert panelists. First, Yang berbahagia Datuk Nur Syamsiah binti Muhammad Yunus, Deputy Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia, Mr. Vicente, CEO of Singapore Deposit Insurance Corporation, Mr. Heru Budiargo, Chairman of Indonesia Deposit Insurance Corporation, and Mr. Jasbir Singh, Chief Executive Officer of Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee of India. And the panel will be chaired by our CEO himself, Mr. J.P. Sabaran. Dear panel members, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last panel discussion. Sometimes when you're hosting these kind of seminars, you really think, sometimes and occasionally, you kind of in an enjoyable situation. I'd like to start first with Syamsiah, the Deputy Governor of Bank. I've known Syamsiah for about 14 years since number 1 was instrumental in IBM legislation and in fact was in task force. Really good discussions. Second of all, Syamsiah is as a deputy of the bank. We also have with us Heru, another banker. He's been a member of the Chairman since 2000. Knowledge and very, very happy and supporter of Minister of Knowledge. Talking about some very interesting. Another good friend of mine, the chief executive, also been a banker, a regulator, but is unfortunately Malaysian. We've exported that talent to Singapore, and that is in fact to our detriment. I don't know why he still wants to stay in Singapore for years. Finally, Jasbir, who is the executive director of the Deposit Insurance, also been a central bank in decades, it says here. His CV says that he's an expert in a lot of areas in the central bank stuff and said, and I think we've seen yesterday talk about the immediate needs, talk about structural issues, and yesterday, I think walking away from somebody have very important, typically legislation for the requirements, or haven't started thinking about it. Barriers for information, outsourcing arrangements, and I think we're going to talk about this. That's certainly one thing that conference is the outside fees. It's all about money, the fungibility, the transfer, or urban, national focus, mandates, applicability of law, different priorities. And what caught my eye in the really pay attention to is different priorities. That's going to, when you're talking or worse off, that's going to be a really challenge. There will be the major elements. Talk about RRPs and cross this theory that will and how they will be prospect theory yesterday. At that time, because I'm concerned. And you've got also, the rational behavior, important aspects about these. Know thyself, safety net, from self-assessment, from a national, plus domestic, probably prepared this talk about idle in Malaysia. I can tell on that. As I will take a bullet for her. But really, advanced and careful planning, working important to have the interagency depositors and who talks to the press. Talk about communication. Really is important we start to remove the turf by neighbors. That's depositors' preference to talk to part of a resolution. Two, better have a lot of liquidity from this happening. I decided to have a card, 60 police cars decided to send. I think that's what happens. Really is we will not. There will be issues up there.
To be on the counseling panel and being able to speak on areas. Definitely, JP heading to cross-border resolution. And for today's discussion, from a non-CM, predominantly host all previous forms of establishment, including and the level for about 30%, 11 countries on this chart. When you look at all these 13 countries, more than 60% of the country's banking system assets. So effective in resolution and fact that and the arrangement. And this is true regardless of resolution strategy and the approach of tools and the credible resolution trend rather than when the development of such strategy has progressed. All well aware that trust is not built earlier than later, particularly those countries hosting locally. All CM cross-border systemic external resolution is contemplated at the 4 key areas to consider greatly on credible liquidity strategy. In timely information data and consistent commission strategy. Confidence is the deciding factor which can enable implementation of a resolution. Coordinating of funding arrangements, the SP. The lack of progress in establishing and coordinating with comprehensive, also typically based on will affect the effectiveness of gaps in information. So important to enhance trust and cooperation by minimizing information is rising from intra-group interconnectivity. Because of this lack of that any resolution strategy that one is misalignment. Some of the practices of how prudential regulation should be tailored or designed around exposures. But we do not want it that will frustrate the implementation. Those authorities are looking at the end of the day functioning of that financial settlement. Thus far, I have spoken which, if we here in Asia, credible and feasible affairs between jurisdiction process already post-challenging group-wide supervision well in advance of resolution. Thus, consolidated advisory colleges and CM countries have elevated the without robust
Thank you for the introduction and also share and also to the PNA by giving you good insurance and full protection schemes. And it's the policy owners. So the main requirement to so we have so I won't go into detail into this chart, but this to help us look for implementation. So we would like to categorize the key risks as other examples of the main standalone risks. Some of them realize that there are risks with the exception of risks either global, regionalized, or the way we meet. For overheads, down on the liquidity, low redundancies, we ask and work for risk. We want to participate, but at the same time, we also of the details of processing. Here is what I would like to turn the depositors would be the batch processing that would end systems. Finally, the data extraction system. If any of those found is that failure of that on the blank most of the time, don't really incorporate that word. It would cost looking at box. We recognize that there are at the same time that there are tangible benefits to information. The box, still we get that information. What I would like to suggest is perhaps at the same time as having the bottom-up approach, asking why not more than 30. If information, there are any risks to ensure that there's no constructing what we have seen of the institutions, our institutions, so to speak. Yeah?
I'd like to thank you. Before I start my presentation, please. Then followed by the bank resolution and deposit insurance program. First of all, I would like to highlight the economic situation was benign with an annual rate of 5.2% inflation, and this is also the economic growth. Point is, and group as a next as one of the financial safety coordinating forum has evolved members and function. Latest was established number year 2010. Members of the forum comprised of many problems encountered in the next slide of effort in financial institution governance. All will at a nationwide crisis management framework as will assess the finances by using indicators according to their crisis. So this is the mechanism. In normal condition, every month, this produce for institution by its institution is also a member of the committee. So you can see condition that each member could take necessary measure in order to discuss the result. One can also ask the crisis management protocol also applies for any decision made in the committee issues as when involving the use of the budget to cope up with parliamentary approval. Next slide. There is a slide. The closing of this chapter is both the challenge of number one, crisis management in finance versus the economic financial stability, but a strong the need of coordination and integration of government institutions, trade, food and agriculture, transmigration industry, regional lesson number two, finance, which equipped by tools and legal should be run effectively in the committee should ensure enforcement agency alignment of regulation related to state laws of banking regulation problem and could not be revived. The bill then become available by the committee. The committee decided that the bill bank over to IDIC. Next step is injecting then after some time for a non-systemic failed bank committee involvement option for the bank. When IDIC decided not to liquidation process to the bank and while in Indonesia, comprised of the and rural bank. I already there almost all status related legal status. We have not yet got any experience. License is revoked by have had noticed some challenge by the issues of support for asset recovery by the non-incorporated. Moreover, there are several other potentials for the issues of unprotected Indonesian citizens. Our deposit program, when we make a negotiation with related, what we can do more simple way, balance of ring fencing liquidated. So you then DIC. And number three, an opportunity. I would like to give a quick highlight. Case the bank was determined banking supervisory authority 2008. One day after, on November, was handed over the resolution thereafter. Necessary action. There are many precious. Number one. lesson caused by the very short to the moment it was determined by the committee and handed over to IBIC. Number 2, recovery plan, and number 3, there are inadequate problems. Appears not done. Capital number 4, capital injected. Number 5, there is no resolution protocol with the productive environment.
In organizing the event, this situation for me and the set up and enter into the action. We also the first time operating in India through reducing the complexity and detail in the comprehensive treatment. So I have been as good by the team. Secondly, the very Indian language.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a couple of questions for Samsha, and from your presentation and supervisory call. The question is really, how can find...
It's a challenge, and I think it's summarily by all supervisors. This is something that all of us that we know that we need to address, and I think that is that balance that we need to strike between actions, so that an action of a post will not frustrate the bigger picture. It's something that we ought to continue this dialogue as to what would be the appropriate balance between making it efficient. What I attempted to do in my presentation to say is from non-CMG can add to the strength of the RRP. Where for Asia, where we ourselves have banks that have regional presence, that's where it is very important for us to foster that kind of relationship and trust during ongoing supervision. While in terms of the interactions that we have at home of the GCIPs, what we are trying to do in Asia is to make sure that the supervisory colleges are included us, and I think that is much more manageable because we do not have that many, like for us in Malaysia, our biggest bank have operations in having 15 supervisors around the table back to some of the GCIPs. So we do understand something that I think there is ongoing efforts to see.
In fact, we have just done it, and we don't this program has been. We are hopeful that, but in fact, as I said, it depends upon how much.
With that comment, I think want to sort of like drop the ball of the supervisor drop. I think there was definitely a for that request to supervisors to have certain offshoring, or many of them are offshore to a parent or a sister company. The difference is that it happens to be local. So the initial concept, so banks are expected to risk such as country the parent has the data for them, or third-party service provider. So it's quite obvious that they have to take into account things like and to look at this risk. Could there be terrorist attacks? Could there be how disrupt the flow of it? And what we have seen in talking to a lot of investment into having redundancies. So I've seen cases where they have dual undersea cables, telcos. So they have gone to great lengths to build in those backups and contingency. I don't think it's ever crossed their mind that they should provide for, or they should invest heavily for a scenario where they fail. So I think we're just beginning to, in fact, cover these issues. So I think we maybe move in the opposite direction. Just started to talk to this institution advisor to say that we should consider non-technical risk. I think so far the focus has been on telco providers, outages, lines of communication being and a lot of attention, but not so much of what happens if the home liquidator steps into the bank and starts to say no information flows out unless I give the go-ahead. That's perfectly legitimate. I mean, they're trying to save costs for their creditors, etc. So the needs of a pay box located in some other country is of high priority to them. So I think we need to really consider this very seriously to see whether we should have these processors or if not hot sites, at least warm sites, so that the data can at least be reconstructed. Today, you have no paper trails at all. If you go in and transact online banking transaction, for some of these updates to the customer account happen real time, and it's happening in Hong Kong, in India, elsewhere, and there's no paper trail for that data or the account balance to be reconstructed. Kind of a long answer to your question.
On advice to give us, because they seem to have others, you know, with
First of all, I give you advice. Some of them are important.
And roadblocks are not really serious legal. What are the critical function level of data? That kind of effect. There are certain critical ongoing communication.
Invite us at different times for coffee, so we can talk. It's an impressive number. We're certainly impressed. Really, I was really either honest and objective always is to transfer. Thank my colleagues at PIDM for. Mr. Chairman, the Asia Pacific, I would suggest that we do this every talking about cross-border issues. It is important that we monitor. One of the things that I fantastic after all these intellectual. So, for me, well, of course, I think I'm waiting in the sidelines to be called by the last thing I want to say, final deposit insurers and residents is to get their right. But, I wish you action is merely a dream. Vision with action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, JB. Thank you, panel members.